International Projects webinar. We also have special guests on the line who are joining us from GAIN today. As we go through, as we go through our webinar today, please know that you're welcome to ask questions. We're having a little bit of technical difficulty with the sound, so we're going to ask that everybody stay muted. In order to ask a question, you'll be able to type into the question box that's over here. And at the end of the webinar, I'll read those questions out to Amanda and all of our speakers from GAIN, and they'll be able to answer your questions here on the webinar. They're also able to answer your questions via email at the end. During the webinar, we encourage you to join us. Thank you. If anybody is not Bonnie and is on our webinar right now, please make sure that you're muted. We have a few people who are on that have voice access that I can't remove. During the webinar, please join us online at Twitter, #GCCA webinar. And after the webinar, I encourage you to check out our new community at community.gcca.org. I know Amanda's already posted quite a bit of international project updates on there. We've got a good conversation going. And without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda Brondy, our Director of International Projects here at GCCA.
Thank you, Olivia. Okay, much appreciated. Hi, my name is Amanda. I think for the most part I have spoken with most people on the phone right now, but for those of you who don't know me, I've been with GCCA now for about 6 months. I have a background in international development and was really excited to join GCCA when I did, because I don't know how many of you have really paid attention to what's going on in the development world, but there's a lot of attention and excitement about reducing post-harvest loss and food waste. I even saw most recently a gentleman who used to be on The Daily Show did a series about how crazy food waste is in the United States. And so joining GCCA as a way to help reduce that, the problems that are happening with that was really exciting to me. Within international projects, we are extremely dependent upon our members. And that is going to be kind of a theme that I go through today. And I'm going to have a quick presentation before passing it over to Bonnie. During this presentation, the things I just really wanted to review briefly was our proposals, new awards, and our active projects. And I only wanted to go through that to give the folks on the line an impression about what it is that we've been doing during this year, so you can get a sense of where we're going, the countries that we're working on, and the types of assistance that we've been providing. I want to touch briefly onto the benefits of international involvement, and then what this new initiative is that we are doing with the GAIN project. So very quickly on the proposals and new business, since I've started in March, we've already submitted 19 proposals, and we have another one that's in development. We've won 10 projects, so we're at a 52% I guess win rate, and we're still waiting to hear about 5 more. Our biggest donor that we tend to work with is with USAID, and they have a really big focus on Africa right now within the international development sphere. And so a lot of the projects that we're going to be doing in the future are really targeted to Africa, and that is actually highlighted by this slide. It just shows where USAID's money is going. The lighter the blue, the more money is going to that country. So there's a little bit in South Asia and over in the Middle East, but for the majority, we see it's really targeted to Africa. This is just a quick summary of our proposals by region. More than half of our submitted proposals have been in Africa, with the others mostly focused on Asia. The Middle East and Latin America are not really represented very well here, but we do have one post-harvest loss project with the OIC, which is the Organization for Islamic Cooperation, which has 57 member countries. That's the one I refer to as global. So we do have a lot of information on the Middle East, but it's not, we don't have one single project where we're targeted to countries in that region. These are the awards that we've won by the technical areas. And the thing I wanted to point out here, people often ask me what we need from our members on our projects, and honestly, it is every aspect of the cold chain. We do have a couple projects where we really focus on local association development and strengthening, and those are the skill sets that GCCA, like Corey and Richard, and the folks here have. We do that as a means to enhance sustainability within a country. but by and large, when partners come to us, what they're looking for is the expertise of our members, and starting with post-harvest and moving down throughout the entire cold chain. This is just a quick slide to show what we see as trends. For the lesser developed countries, the areas that we are really asked to work on are the post-harvest techniques, new innovations that are context appropriate for particular countries, and then training and technical assistance. So those are the countries that have the least amount of development. As we move up and we get into more advanced and emerging markets, some of the countries in Asia, Latin America certainly, we're asked to target more of the business skills. We work on the association strengthening for sustainability, and then we really get into the transport and design build aspects, which tend to require a lot of capacity. So then in 2015, we have actively worked on 11 projects, and they cover more than 60 countries. And I only wanted to say this to give you an overview of the kind of the breadth of what we do. The implementation of our projects is hugely important. It's one thing to say that we've won so many, and that is an excellent, but what's really important is that we actually implement them, and we implement them well. It really takes a lot of assistance to get these going, and we're subject to timing, so when they happen quickly. And so that's often why I'm extremely dependent upon you guys, our members, to help out with these. So these are just some photos to show you what it can look like to be involved, and then I wanted to give a few reasons as to why people do participate with us. And the photo that you're seeing, it's one of our members, Marco Djeladovic, actually speaking at a conference in the Philippines on design build. The bottom photo, we have James Rusty Eason out in Bangladesh providing, visiting cold stores out there, or the lack of cold storage, and providing expertise on what they can do better. The top photo in the left is our long-term colleague, Moomin, who works in Uzbekistan, constantly working with farmers out there to try to get cold chain up and running. So members do this for different reasons. The best reason is a business interest. Working on these international projects offers a chance to learn about other countries, make business connections, which could potentially be leveraged into new business dollars. It's the first mover advantage. But beyond that, a lot of our members do this as a way to just help out. There's a humanitarian side. The post-harvest loss issues are so paramount that cold chain has a real impact on reducing them. So a lot of our members just simply want to help, use their expertise and help others. Third, some people are really just curious to see a new place, and that's a very valid reason to want to participate with us. And then finally, one of the things that I think is most beneficial it could perhaps be viewed as a recruitment or capacity building within an organization. It may be difficult for some of our smaller companies to get out and do something international, but I think it's important to recognize that the membership in GCCA, through that, if you have young or older staff who are looking for opportunities, they don't want to leave the company, they want to stay, but they're looking for opportunities that could maybe just offer an additional learning opportunity, then if they participate with us, and that it really opens some doors to their professional development, and it really helps us out a lot. So finally, what I really wanted to touch upon is what we've been doing with GAIN. Historically, GCCA does partner with a number of different partners in which we develop proposals for pre-existing projects with USAID, USDA, and other big donors. Back in 2013, GCCA and GAIN actually signed an MOU recognizing that we have areas for potential collaboration. And then over the past year or so, we've built upon that MOU to actually design a project with GAIN. The benefits in doing this is that we're actually working with GAIN to develop the project, as opposed to getting a proposal that someone else has put together who maybe doesn't understand what our members are interested in or how to work with cold chain. And so we're constrained by the limitations that that person, who may not know exactly all the details about cold chain, has set upon a project. So that's one of the benefits about what we've been doing with GAIN. I'm going to go into the details of what we'll be doing, but then just I wanted to say our long-term goal is to create a process for this project where businesses, and we're going to focus on Nigeria, businesses are matched with businesses in the United States and other developed countries. So for example, if a Nigerian business is struggling to set up a cold storage, then this project that we're implementing with GAIN could work with them to determine what skill sets are needed, and then we facilitate a match so that a GCCA member could provide technical assistance and guidance to that business. If it works well, it can be replicated in other countries. I've said in a number of emails that we're still in the process of designing exactly how this is going to work. One of the great aspects about working with GAIN is that they are really interested to set up something that can be promoted and replicated elsewhere. So at this initial stage, we are kind of starting to just gather a lot of information. So this slide shows you kind of what we're going to be doing over the course of this year. First, we're going to be developing an inventory of businesses and innovations that could be helpful to businesses in Nigeria. We're going to actually do a member assessment, a needs assessment in Nigeria to determine what is it that is needed over there. What are the Nigerian businesses lacking that our members can facilitate with through technical assistance. And eventually what we'd like to have is a list of companies who are on our short list for technical assistance. So if there is a business in Nigeria that we found, we would have, we're calling them MOUs, just basically letters of interest from our members saying like, yes, I would be willing in the future to provide technical assistance, to this company. So I want to be clear that what we're asking for at this moment in time is not any sort of investment from you or your company. We're not asking for financial investment. If somebody got involved and that was something they wanted to do on their own accord, that would be excellent, but it is genuinely not something that we're expecting at this point. We're focused on the skill sets that you have and your willingness to provide technical assistance to businesses in Nigeria. So what I really want to do is find out from these webinars who is interested to participate. Participation at this point in time is helping me and GAIN to determine how this project can really take advantage of what we've got and move it forward. We want to know if you have any comments on, if you're going to sign an MOU, what do you feel comfortable signing? I want people I can reach out to and say, we're looking for innovations in this area. Is your business doing anything exciting in cold storage or in a refrigerated warehouse or anything that we could include in our list of innovations? Do you have any contacts in Nigeria that you might be willing to share? It's really some sort of like task force or advisory board that I can reach out to as we move forward to this project to help determine what it is that we can do to make this sustainable and also have the greatest impact. So if you are interested in this project, I would ask that you would send me an email and let me know, are you interested in only Nigeria, or does your interest extend to other countries, and would you be willing to participate in other projects? And please let me know if you're willing to share why you're interested in it. Are you coming at it from the humanitarian side, for curiosity, long-term business interest, potential? And then please just let me know what's the best way that I can reach you. I'm trying to determine GCCA. We've started the communities, and I think that that's been very successful, but is email a better way, or do you prefer phone calls? I'm happy to do whatever it is I can to reach our members. So please let me know that, and then we'll be moving forward to set up this just small kind of task force of interested members. So that's it for me. Thank you so much for listening. I am happy to take any questions at the end. And for the moment, I'm just going to pass this over to Olivia, who's working to pass this over to Bonnie McClafferty from GAIN, who's going to do a bit more of a deep dive into what GAIN is doing and how they see this project benefiting those in Nigeria.
Oh.
And Bonnie, I'm having trouble switching the controls over, so if you don't mind, we can push through the slides for you.
Okay, no problem. So hello everyone. I understand we have some people on the webinar who attended a great exploratory meeting we had last July here at the GAIN offices, a couple other folks who may be new to this idea, please welcome all. What I'd like to do is give you a little bit of an orientation of what is GAIN and why is GAIN interested in something like this. And then from there we can go into the specific offer that we have in front of us and how we at GAIN see building this out, and clearly with GCCA members as the core anchor partners to our first foray into reducing the post-harvest loss of nutritious foods in particular. So even before I think we go to the first slide, maybe just a minute about GAIN for those who don't know. GAIN is the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, and we were started about maybe 15 years ago now by a group of donors that came together to say, there wasn't any one institution that focused on nutrition. There was a little bit in the UN system, of course some universities doing some work, but no dedicated organization just focusing on nutrition. And in the beginning, GAIN focused on large-scale food fortification, which you all might be quite familiar with: iodized salt, fortified oils, fortified wheat flour. And for GAIN, what's very important, unlike other organizations that work in this space, is that we are bound to go look only at projects that can go to scale and that use market-based approaches in particular. So we have many, many engines and many alliances that are linking business into this very challenging fields of feeding the world, and in particularly the poor and undernourished, which we all know is a very risky market. So with that, we started with large-scale food fortification. We moved in to build a program around maternal, infant, and young children, those foods that are particular to those populations. And then the third area is the area that I run, which is on agriculture and food systems to make nutritious foods more available and accessible to the poor. Now, with those three models, GAIN has been successful in bringing nutritious foods close to over 900 million people. And of course, when you take a model that uses the private sector, that's where you're going to get your largest reach, and we're very committed to that. Within the Agriculture and Food Systems program, we have three areas that we work. One is on very particular strengthening the supply chains for nutritious foods, which is where this project sits. The second is we have engines where we try to build the markets and provide grants and technical assistance to small and medium scale enterprises that are bringing things into the market, such as milk vending companies and chicken part distributors, and these types of small and medium scale enterprises, which where a lot of the poor are actually eating from those enterprises. This third area, of course, is an area where there's pretty much a black box, which is understanding the farmers' nutrition themselves. So in the slide you see in front of you, our big challenge here is linking agriculture with nutrition, and I think we can advance through this one. And you'll see that if we're trying to bring them together, our largest challenge is that nutrition has typically been seen in sort of a medical lens, and we treat nutrition as if only doctors can prescribe nutrition. But we know that the food system has an enormous impact on the nutritional quality of food. So in this program, we actually do look at the supply chain as our organizational framework for better nutrition, unlike a lot of nutrition programs which will look at basically the life cycle, nutrition for infants, nutrition for moms. We want to look at nutrition as foods move from the farm all the way to the plate. Next slide, please. So when it comes to post-harvest loss, this is clearly one of the huge areas, the huge pinch points we see in making nutritious commodities available and accessible to the poor. One can't avoid the fact that we are losing most of our nutritious foods as foods move off farm. Here's some statistics that were coming from the Rockefeller Foundation, and I probably don't need to let most of you know that. But we see a 15% income reduction for smallholder farmers because of malnutrition. I mean, because of the loss of nutritious foods. We estimate you could feed 1.6 billion people with the food that's lost, and that there are all other kinds of benefits in having not wasted or lost those foods. But when you really look at the types of food and where most of it is being lost is in fact in the area of fruits and vegetables. And so we will focus in on fruits and vegetables first as the first commodities that we try to bring through this post-harvest loss and waste facility for nutrition. Next slide, please. Just not to bore you with numbers, but we at GAIN really needed to take a look at what kind of impact would we have if we were able to reduce the loss of, and in this case, just a particular commodity. So in Kenya, we looked at mango. Mango is one of the highest sources of vitamin A, and we know the prevalence of undernutrition for vitamin A in Kenya is terribly as high as 84%, and these are for children under 5. We know that the nutrient itself, the product itself, provides a high source of vitamin A. And when all is said and done and we start to do all the calculations and you look at the loss itself of mango, we calculate that we could perhaps, even if we were to capture 25 to 35% of the loss, we would end up with 85,000 to 120,000 doses of vitamin A that we could bring back into the food system. So this is really critical from a nutrition lens to see how we can start improving the food system by not losing these very rich foods. Next slide, please. So when we look at this, the distribution of waste as we move through the supply chain, I think there's 2 points I'd like to make here. First of all, the profile of where loss takes place in a country like the United States versus most of the developing world is quite different. In the US and in Western Europe, you find a lot of loss taking place closer to retail and certainly in the household. But when it comes to Africa, given the constraints in the infrastructure, we're seeing a lot of loss taking place actually through the distribution system, the processing and packaging, and of course on farm as well. So I think it's real important to note that, and that the opportunities that lends when you start talking about mitigating some of the impact of the loss, our focus isn't necessarily on retail as it might be here in the United States, but our focus really has to be post-harvest, that time right when we start taking the tomatoes or the leafy greens or the vegetables off the field and trying to get them to the consumers. Next slide, please. This is something I don't have to tell any of you. This is just for some to know that the cold chain obviously is important all the way from the farm to the warehouse to the retails and the grocery stores and even in the household. Next slide, please. So there are numerous factors that drive these inefficiencies and subsequent wastage of in the supply chain, in particular in Nigeria. So for those who were able to attend the meeting we had earlier this summer, we had a really interesting presentation from your colleague and our colleague, Namika, who runs a company in Nigeria. And he was highlighting some very particular constraints he finds, which is the long distance between the farms and processing. Oftentimes what you have is something being harvested in the north in a state, brought down without package or crating in the back of a big truck and brought to a processing plant outside of Lagos. It could be several days' journey. And by the time it gets there, of course, it's not useful. So the long distance between farming and processing was highlighted as one of the key constraints. The lack of capital and investment, making sure that companies actually are viable businesses that are actually able to have investors come to the table. Of course, there's infrastructure problems such as the high fuel prices, roads that are actually impassable, and those are constraints that we would have to deal with along the way. The environment in which these foods are trying to be maintained are of course very harsh, sometimes quite hot, intermittent but very heavy rains. So there are a lot of technical challenges moving forward. But in fact, the trained labor, the innovation, the equipment, this is where we think we can have an impact to reduce the deterioration of some of these products as they move down the supply chain. We can continue on, please. So what we've found at GAIN in our analysis and a lot of consultation is that there are 3 areas that we're going to focus our Post-Harvest Loss Alliance for Nutrition. You folks, of course, are the anchor partners for the cooling and cold chain piece of it. We are similarly approaching associations that look at packaging and crating, because what we're finding is in the packaging phase, we often find foods are just heaped or thrown into the back of vehicles. And we need to then, of course, try to see how we can bring better packaging and crating as businesses, packaging and crating businesses into the mix. This idea of proximate processing, I think I discussed before. We need to move the processors closer to the farms. There was some very interesting conversation that actually happened in our previous meeting where this was highlighted as sort of jumped out immediately as having, needing to bring warehouses, et cetera, closer to the point of production. Next. So one of the things that we've been talking about GCCA about is to make a distinction here between what are the operators and what are the equipment suppliers, and what kind of technical assistance might they want to provide. So this is just a slide that highlights a little bit of where we think we can go with this, that operators actually could supply some business and technical advisory services, and that the equipment suppliers really have a good idea of this innovation and the technologies and the equipment that maybe can be modified or be transferred over in this business-to-business linkage. But what we would do is mobilize the investment partners around any of these linkages between businesses and try and then be able to augment and get support for this matchmaking. We at GAIN can go back and, just as I think Amanda had alluded to, that most of her funding comes from USAID. This entire alliance is being funded by USAID, and they are very keen to be able to provide some of the public support to be able, through small grants and smart subsidies, to buy down some of the financial risk. Of course, we would have to put together a mechanism that's very carefully assesses that possibility. We would want to, of course, provide some of the business TA in the perishable food companies and value chain. We do this throughout GAIN. Bringing businesses to the business, bringing industry to the business of nutrition has always required that GAIN work on marketable business plans, particularly in the developing world, to make them investable. We would create a common shared goals, so we would make sure we're all headed in the same direction around post-harvest loss and waste. And then we would, obviously, we would want to look at measuring some of the losses as we go forward to make sure we're on board with our goals. Next slide. So at this point in time, as Amanda has emphasized, GAIN wants to design anything, this whole initiative. We're at the stage where we now have just recently, within the last 2 weeks, have received funding to build this alliance out. And this is our first opportunity beyond our initial exploratory meeting to really sit with you, the members of GCCA, and say, well, what can this actually look like? Are the incentives set up well for you folks to be engaged in this? What would you need to see in a business-to-business linkage so that you could provide sort of your best-in-class technologies and your knowledge and to your partner company that would now sit in Nigeria. And just as background, the reason why Nigeria was chosen was for several reasons. The first is it's really what Amanda is calling these emerging, advanced and emerging markets. For those of us that have worked in Nigeria, it is probably, of course, one in every five Africans are Nigerian. If those who don't know Nigeria, it is quite a big, an enormous country with a lot of investment behind it. There are a lot of innovators. And I think it really is one of those countries where we can start thinking about investment taking off, and I know there are several on the phone who might actually want to comment about that. So Nigeria was chosen from that. Businesses might find that it's a bit less risky than heading into a country such as Mali or Niger to try to make the business-to-business connection. USAID is interested in it for the very same reason, and there are many other investors who are looking toward Nigeria, so we would look to augment your technical assistance with investors who are interested in investing in Nigeria. So perhaps the next slide? Okay, so that's it. So thanks everyone. That was just a quick overview of GAIN. I think what I would like to get out of, and maybe during the Q&A, is to see, just to get your reactions to this concept. Are we missing something? Is there something that we should be bringing in right now beyond technical assistance, innovation technology, and financial assistance into this mechanism that would continue to build more partners onto the platform? So it would be great for you to hear some comment about that. Again, we are moving forward with GAIN not only to be looking at cooling and cold chain, but we'll also be looking at the creating and packaging and then the proximate processing. But the mechanism is still the same. It's a B2B linkage platform. And so any insights you might want to give in the design of that and how we could most incentivize businesses to become involved. And then as part of that, what is it that might prevent you from participating? Do you find that this is highly risky? How might we sort of de-risk this for those who could contribute significantly to reducing post-harvest loss and waste, but might be sitting on the fence for that investment? So I'm going to stop right there and send it back to Amanda.
Great. We've had a couple of questions come in, and Amanda and I were just discussing if anybody wants to fill in with some of the information that Bonnie was just asking for and share what your thoughts are and what your hesitancies are and what you're interested in. If you look over by your name, you should see an icon that will allow you to raise your hand in the webinar. And if I see any hands raised, what I can do is I can unmute you and try to take some questions orally, or if you want to type in your responses into that chat box or question box, either way that's working for you. I guess we can go ahead and start now. We've got questions piling in through the question box, so again, feel free to do that or click that raise hand icon so that we can unmute some folks. But first off, I think this was directed for you, Amanda. Can you describe what the commitment looks like, the time, the days, days of travel, and what skills are being sought?
At this point, I can give you kind of a broad overview. Hold on just a second. You said time, skills, like the commitment itself.
Yeah.
At this stage, for the next, I would say, approximately year, the commitment that we'd be asking for is really just advising. I'll probably most likely, unless you ask me to call you and set up meetings, I'll most likely be sending out email requests asking for your just advice and opinions. If you're unable to respond or don't have any information, then you can just ignore my emails and you don't have to respond. For this next year, we're really looking just to get this thing off the ground. Beyond that, for the technical assistance, the needs will be defined as we move the project forward. I mentioned briefly we'll be doing a needs assessment to determine what types of skill sets that we are looking for. My assumption from what I know working in Africa and from what I've seen GCCA do, it's going to be kind of one-on-one mentorship in the areas of transportation, cold storage, operations, perhaps design build. I don't think we'll be focused on post-harvest in this particular project, but that is something that GCCA does a lot. And as far as length of time, that is one of the areas that we will be flexible on. As far, if someone has a week, then great. If someone has 10 days, then great. That's going to be part of the matching process, is determining not only what are the skill sets that are needed, but how much time and when is the timing, what makes the most sense. So I would say typically most of our technical assistance type opportunities are anywhere from a week to 2 weeks. I think I've covered that. If I didn't cover a part of that question, just write back and let us know.
That sounds pretty good. And we'd had several questions that you just answered from, it looks like most of the audience was asking about technical assistance and what kind of commitment that is. I don't currently see any hands raised. Are there any other questions? We'll give it just about 30 seconds. Anyone else filling in anything else?
That was really every single question.
That was every single question was about commitment. And I know that Amanda mentioned earlier her email address is in the chat box if you missed it. It's abrondy@gcca.org. And I know she's really looking forward to hearing more about what your hesitancies are, what kind of things that you're interested in doing internationally. Again, do join us online, community.gcca.org. There's a ton of information already on there, and it looks like a pretty strong discussion thread going about international projects.
I would just like to reiterate, if there is anybody on the line who's able to comment on the question from Bonnie, upon hearing this presentation, is there anything that we're missing that you know offhand that you'd like to comment on?
I also did get a few more questions in, so thank you for your participation today. Is amazing. Thank you. Hi, Amanda. What about access to finance, training, and facilitation?
I'm not sure if that is a question asking like that. That could be a potential area that our members have. I can think of a couple members who come to mind immediately who definitely have that skill set, and I envision, and I apologize for neglecting that. I do envision that that is going to be a component to this project. One of the things that we've come to realize working in a lot of different locations is people have great ideas, but they don't always have the skill sets needed to sell those ideas and to properly present to investors. And so that absolutely is an area, just these business skills that our members have and could potentially be of use, and I do expect that they would be of great use in Nigeria.
And another question that came in, does cold storage exist in Nigeria today?
Oh man, I wish it does, but we haven't actually done an assessment there, so I don't know. I don't have any hard figures. I'm not sure if Victor is on the line. He was on the line earlier. He'd probably be in a better place to comment on this.
Amanda, Victor, this is Roberta. Victor is online.
I don't know if he's able to make a comment on that. There is some existing cold storage. Generally, what we find, and this makes sense in every country, is that the larger cities will have the most advanced systems, and as you move out throughout the country, and Nigeria is one of the largest African countries, those systems, that infrastructure, it's less and less and declines overall. Also, those systems are vertically integrated. So generally, when you have one company who's interested to work there and has the funds, they will set up everything that they need for themselves. So it doesn't yield the potential for a lot of other businesses or other opportunities to benefit from that existing infrastructure.
I think that was the last of our questions. I don't know if anybody else had anything that they wanted to share or add.
Yeah, thank you, but I just wanted to get very clear what the specific question is. Yeah.
So for everyone, that is Victor Ajero. Victor is the GAIN Senior Manager for Food and Nutrition Security. He is also working very, very closely with the government of Nigeria as their senior advisor. Sorry, Victor, I just wanted to give you a little intro.
Yeah, thanks, Bonnie. I just want to be very clear what the question is, and I can make my input here.
Victor, the question was, is there existing cold storage facilities and infrastructure in Nigeria?
Yeah, I think there are some efforts and to drive the cold chain technologies in Nigeria at different levels. Yes, especially around fisheries, there's some cold chain technologies. Also in the medical part, there's some cold chain technologies. But when it comes to the management of fresh fruits and vegetables and all that, that scale is quite limited. So there are pockets of initiatives, activities, and businesses at different levels, but the scale is quite limited, and a lot of challenges that upcoming innovators and businesses face, and that's why there's a huge gap between the need and the services that are being provided. But that's why I feel that an initiative like this is going to help scale up this innovation, get more businesses into this space, and then provide the necessary encouragement that will help them to get into, especially in the agricultural value chain, and then looking at nutritious food. But definitely, there are pockets of establishments, businesses, potential interest already in the country at this point in time. Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else come in? No, I think that was it. Okay. I am the type of person who does not always come up with questions immediately. I usually take a little bit of time to process. So if that is the case for any of you, and you do realize later today that we are actually missing something and we do need to consider something else, then please do just reach out to me and let us know.
Yes, and to add to that, so this is Bonnie. This is a great time to be able to help shape this platform. We really are beginning with our first anchor partner being GCCA. We've had, just as an example, we've had several folks contact us to try to really look at the climate change lens as part of this. And in terms of sustaining and continuing to sustain the alliance, is there a way that we can actually build in and be able to capture carbon credit as part of this facility? So that's an example of an innovation that we would think about as we begin to really solidify the architecture of the alliance and what it can do.
Anything else come through? Okay.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for joining us. We hope to see you online to continue this conversation. Also, keep in mind that on October 14th, we're repeating this webinar, hopefully to reach an included international audience. So be sure to check that out on the events page at gcca.org. Again, if you have any questions, Amanda and I are looking forward to seeing them online in the community, or write to Amanda's email at abrondy@gcca.org. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you, GCCA.